Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Our guest today is Amanda. So, Amanda, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dan. My name is Amanda Shuman. I'm the founder of Carrie Love Designs. We are a marketing agency. We do all the way from branding, website design to continued marketing. Specifically, our bread and butter is in the hospitality industry. We serve mostly B2C clients.
Awesome. So, I'm just curious about your background. How did you get into this space in the first place?
Yeah, actually, it goes back to a movie that you might not have seen, 13 going on 30. And so Jenna Rink, if you're familiar with the movie, she moves to New York City and she becomes an editor of a magazine. And I watched that movie and I was like, that sounds like so much fun. I grew up in a small Texas town. And so just the idea of moving to New York City and being an editor at a magazine sounded just crazy to me. And so I went to college for graphic design. And so that's how it started, is because I wanted to be Jenna Rink.
That's awesome. So, did you end up going to New York, or what did that process look like for you to kind of get to your current business?
Actually, no. I followed an ex-boyfriend to Houston and went to the Art Institutes where I got my degree. And I started working for, straight out of college. The great thing about the Art Institutes, whenever they were around, is they help you with job placement. So at the end, whenever you're getting your graduation, they have a job fair and you can show your portfolio and potential employers will come up there. And so I ended up actually getting contracted out to Shell Oil. And so I was working on their creative, I'll put air quotes around creative, marketing team. And it is anything but creative. I always joke and say that a monkey could have done my job because their brand guidelines are so strict that it was basically, drag and drop, copy and paste type of work. And I was like, this is not what I got a degree in graphic design to do. And so I started freelancing on the side just as a creative outlet. I had an Etsy shop where I was selling pre-made logos, and that turned into doing brand design, and that eventually morphed into websites. And here we are, almost 8 years later, and we have a marketing agency.
That's awesome. So, I guess when you were, working at, you said Shell, right? And what did that kind of look like? It's obviously there's so many different types of creatives. Were you doing ads for them? Were you just doing in-store kind of marketing things? What did that kind of look like?
Yeah, I was contracted to Shell, so I actually worked for a commercial printer who printed out all of the signage that you would see inside of gas stations and, stores, and all the end caps whenever they would do, certain sales and stuff. And so I was the assistant print manager. And so I would work with the creative team to get all of their files ready and everything for it to be sent to print out all the large posters and just signage that you would see everywhere for Shell Oil.
That's awesome. So essentially, if they were having some sort of promo, in the store where it's I don't know, sometimes I'll go to 7-Eleven, you see $1 off kind of coupon thing. So you would help print those out and make sure that it's correct for each store, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So anything from the coupons to the big cutouts that you'll see, they do a lot with NASCAR and their promotions there. And it's just a lot of legal stuff, making sure, working with the legal team to make sure that they have everything legally that they need on there, and just a lot of things that you don't think of whenever you're not in that job.
Yeah, for sure. I know that when you go up market, when you're working with larger companies, that they have a lot of restrictions and certain things that you can or can't say, and terms and conditions, privacy, all these things that have to be on every single piece of any branding, essentially.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. So then you went from that, you started freelancing on Etsy, and people were finding you on there. So just talk more about that. You were making logos, what else did that process kind of look like?
Yeah, so I started, just doing the pre-made logos on the Etsy shop, and people were, purchasing. I went down the Etsy rabbit hole. I mean, back then I was on all the community boards and everything, and putting my stuff on Pinterest, and getting it to connect to the Etsy shop. And I ended up taking a course, like an online course about creating, I don't remember what this course was called. It was basically like creating your signature offer. And going through that, I was like, man, I want to do like full brand design for clients, not just a pre-made logo, but I want to work with them on the branding side of things. And within brand design, like it goes back to a lot of brand strategy. And so it was a lot of things that I was learning within college courses as well. And so I don't even remember how I got my first like branding clients. I might have even been like cold pitching them through email. And that's how I was getting clients through, Facebook groups, cold pitching. I've always had a lot of tenacity to just go out there and, don't wait for something to come to you, but to go get it yourself if you really want it.
Yeah, it makes sense. So in terms of when you started working with brand design, how did that kind of go from, freelancing to actually going full time and starting your own business?
Oh man, we're talking it's 8 years ago at this point. It actually, so for fast forwarding in my life. So a couple boyfriends and cities later, I ended up in Austin and I was working for a real estate company and I was their marketing coordinator for a real estate company that did apartment sales. So they were selling like in part whole entire apartment buildings to other brokers. I was the only female on an all male team and I was the youngest by, at least probably 10 years. And so as I was a marketing coordinator, I was still being asked to like go pick up the catering or to like schedule flights for the brokers and stuff. And I was like, this is not my job description. And so I ended up, I was working on my business more and more at that point. And everything just kind of came to the head and I actually ended up getting fired from that job. And so once I got fired from that position, I remember like I did the whole like box walk of shame out of the office where, I was like, I am not going to let them see me cry. So I grabbed all my stuff from my cubicle, did the box walk of shame. And then I got to my car and I just like bawled my eyes out. And I called my husband and I was like, I just got fired. After I dusted myself off, I was like, I don't want to go back to another corporate job. Like, I cannot do this. And so my husband was like, well, like realistically, we have 6 months. Like 6 months, that's what we can do, like savings wise. And so I was bound to determine not to go back to a corporate job. And so within 6 months, I couldn't tell you exactly how. Literally, probably by the grace of God, I replaced my income through Carry Love Designs and became like officially legit operating within that 6 months.
That's awesome. And I guess like in the very beginning, how are you going about like getting those, first few clients, and even like how has that changed now in 2025?
Honestly, the best thing is referrals. That was how I grew my business, is just serving the people that I found really, really well and not being afraid to ask for, who do you know that you can recommend me to? And just really going all in on referrals. And that still to this day is a huge aspect of our business, is people referring us.
That's awesome. So essentially that you got some clients early on, and then from there, hey, and now I can place my income and do this full time.
Yeah, and one of our very first like big like notable brand website clients was Lamiga Events, which if you're in the wedding event space, she does beautiful weddings, really high end, just like over the top weddings. And she was one of our very first like, big legit like clients where we got our name on the footer, and she was fantastic at sending us referrals. And so we kind of organically grew into serving the wedding industry almost exclusively for 4 years. And I think that had to do with, just us honing in on a specific niche and marketing to them, showing up where they were at. And so being in, back then it was like Facebook groups, it was the Twitter chats that, people would do. It looked a little bit different, but I think marketing to a specific niche and showing up in those places really helped.
For sure. And then I guess like when it comes to hospitality in general, what does that kind of look like? Because obviously there is, you mentioned obviously, wedding planners. So what other niches do you work with? Do you work with people who are owning restaurants or other types of businesses? Like, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, so hospitality. So that can be, restaurants, travel agencies, hoteliers, anything that's really like med spas. They serve a luxury industry. Our service is really comprehensive, end-to-end white glove. And so we tend to work really well with other people who are operating at the same level of service that we are.
Makes sense. So In terms of branding, let's just say for a restaurant, like what are some of the most common mistakes that you see people making when it comes to like their website or just branding in general?
I think the most common mistake in this, I mean, this spans across the board with every industry that we have worked with, is we see a lot of founders that want to put all of their time and energy into marketing before they ever have a brand, where they think, oh, I can just go get that $50 logo that I used to sell on Etsy and like that be the end of, like, call it a day and let's just start marketing. But really you need that solid foundation of the brand and, like, who's your ideal client? What makes you different than the best, than the rest, than the best? What makes you the best and different from the rest? What is your competition doing that you're doing differently? Like, there's so many things that are not the pretty part that people think of whenever they think of branding. That's so important before you're ever ready to have a line item of marketing.
Makes sense. So you're saying getting all those things dialed in, understanding like your differentiator, especially, hospitality, even more like specifically like in restaurants, there's a very high failure rate in that industry.
Yeah.
So making sure that like you're dialed in on like who you're actually serving.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't be everything to everybody or else you'll fail. So I think honing in on that and really getting secure on your messaging and who you're serving and like what is, like, for a restaurant, for an example, we've all gone to the Cheesecake Factory and they have 100, 200 things on their menu and people are overwhelmed, whenever really, like, cheesecake should be all they're about. And so they could drop their menu down to, like, 5 things and just focus on the cheesecake. And I mean, I think that you might see, their sales increase if they just went all in on cheesecake.
For sure. I mean, Raising Cane's is a great example of that. They're very dialed in on their menu items, and I think there's obviously other businesses, but that's one that comes to mind for sure.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, Chick-fil-A, obviously they've done a really good job at, like, the chicken sandwich, and they have that brand message, and that's what their menu is centered around, is the eat more chicken.
For sure. Obviously, right now we're kind of like at the halfway point here in 2025. So, what are you most focused on here for the rest of the year?
Really, we have just now set our eyes on Q4 and, like, what is the holiday and the sales going to look like. And so that's starting to be our focus, and just our mid-year reset of, what were your goals at the beginning of the year? Are we still in line with that? And what do we need to sell? What do we need to do in order to reach those goals?
So, what does that kind of look like from your perspective? Because obviously, that when it comes to branding, are you helping your clients with running ads or like posting on social media? Like, how do you kind of make sure that when you're working with them, that you're helping them meet their goals?
Yeah, so we focus mostly on digital marketing. And so anything digitally that can be social media, Pinterest, SEO, blogging, email marketing. And so the stuff that you see online. And so at the beginning, whenever we work with any of our clients, we put together a comprehensive marketing strategy. And this can be anywhere from like a 40 to 80 page document that really, sets the tone. We use it as our Bible, like, moving forward, working with our clients. And so inside of that, we say, what are our KPIs? What are we tracking? What are our goals? How many consultations, how many bookings do we want per month for that client in order for them to reach that goals? I mean, if you're in marketing, you probably know this, that it's always working backwards. Like, what's the end goal and how can we break that down? And so for us, we're always, I think that for marketing agencies, there's 2 types of marketing agencies. You have the pretty side of the marketing agencies, and then you have the strategic, where, you're thinking big picture, long-term strategy. And I think where we really excel is we're putting both of those together, where we have that strategic mindset, that big picture, like, goal oriented, but we can back it up and pair it with a beautiful graphics. And I don't think that every marketing agency has both of those.
For sure, yeah, that's spot on. If you could go back in time to before you started this business, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
I think the biggest piece of advice that it took me probably a good solid 5 years is your network is your net worth. And so really understanding about the relationships and pouring time and energy into relationships, aside from sales, just like, genuinely building relationships and helping somebody else out, that in turn will, make them want to refer you because you have taken the time to get to know them and you have helped them I like to think of myself now as a connector. How can my relationship with you, is there anybody else that I can connect you with that will help you to grow your business or whatever it is that you're trying to reach? And so definitely I wish I would known that sooner. And the whole, your network is your net worth.
I agree 100%. Yeah, I'm the same way. I think it's super important, right? Because you just never know, and it's good to have those
Yeah.
conversations, and it's good to connect with people, especially here in Austin. There's lots of opportunities for that.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, you never know. Sometimes you might look at somebody and be like, well, what do I, a marketing agency, have in common with, a pool maintenance or, a hospice facility? But you just never know when somebody's going to be looking for something. And I love being the person that's like, oh, I know somebody for that. Oh, I can send you over somebody. Like, that's a good feeling, helping out other people.
Exactly. So if somebody's watching the show and if they wanted to work with you, wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your website or social media? I guess best ways to get in contact.
Yeah, so our website is Carrie Love Designs. It's Carrie as in the verb. So my name's Amanda, but it's Carrie Love Designs as in like to carry love throughout everything that we do. So carrying love throughout our clients and our work and just, leaving the world a better place. And so it's CarrylOve Designs with an S. And then I am on Instagram. So DM me if you would like me to take a look at your marketing. I'm always happy to do like a free audit of your website or your social media, whatever your pain point is.
So, Amanda, thanks so much for your time today.